Hello, this is DJ Fracture from Astrophonica Records, produced with Fracture and Neptune. And I've recently done an artist series pack for Loopmasters, which contains lots of drums and bass and music loops that you can use in your own studio, that I've created here in my studio, using a lot of this analog equipment. My classic EMU sampler, which is like a real signature sound, if you like, to the Fracture and the Astrophonica sound. So the way in which I've done the pack is that I've concentrated a lot on the analog equipment, overdriving the mixing desk and using the classic filters on the EMU sampler. But I also wanted to give it a contemporary kind of edge. So I kind of use a lot of Logic Audio software to kind of bring that sound up to date so you guys can use it in your home studios. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually take you through a few of the loops that are on the pack and talk a little bit about how you can use them at home. Okay, so I've got a standard Logic Audio setup going on here, and I've imported in one of the drum beats that I used in the pack, and we can have a quick listen to that now. So that's a straight drum beat, that's the full loop. Inside the pack you actually get the full breakdown, so you get the kicks, the snares, the hi-hats and the shakers and all the different bits, so you can kind of break it down. But for the purpose of today, I've used the kind of full drum loop. I've also imported in one of the bassline loops from my pack, which is called, this particular bassline is called Hot Wings, because I think I'd had some spicy chicken wings that day, so I've decided to call it that. And what I've done with the bass lines on this pack, which is really how I work in my own sort of productions, is I've split them into layers. So what that means is you've got like a sub bass layer, which is just providing you with that real low sub bass that you can feel on, feel on a big system and in your chest. And then I've kind of split it, so you've got a top layer as well, which is kind of doing all the movement and has kind of got the sound and the kind of the character of the bass. All right, so what I'll do now, guys, is I will show you this Hot Wings sub bass layer, which is just the sub bass, and sounds like this. So that's just a real simple bass line. But over the top of that, we've got a second layer, which is in exactly the same key, tempo, everything like that, but it's got a bit of character, and on its own, it sounds like this. Okay, so when you mix them together, you've got the low sub layer, and then you've got the top end layer, which just has the character, which I'll explain to you why that's important shortly. But together they sound like this. Okay, so the reason why I've done it like that, and the reason why I've given you the option to work like that, is because it gives you so much more control. You've then got your sub bass layer on one channel here, and you can turn that up and down, or you can add extra effects to that. And you've also got then the top end layer, and likewise you can turn that up and down and kind of have different effects and make that stand out in your mix. So along with the bass line and the drums, we've got a little loop that sounds like this. Okay, so that's the loop flat as it is, no editing, no nothing. So what I'll show you next is how you can make that your own, basically, because obviously it's nice to have all these loops, but what's also really nice is to have the ability to make them your own and kind of make your own compositions out of these loops. Okay, so I've shown you the flat loops, a bass line, the top layer of the bass line, the drums all working together. But now I want to show you how you can kind of edit that and make your own kind of bass line out of it. So what I've done is I've taken both those layers, the sub layer and the top layer, and I've actually put them into the sampler in Logic Audio, the EXS24 sampler. We usually use the EMU sampler in our productions, but it does actually take a lot of time, so I'm not going to bore you with lots of key pressing and button pressing. So I've loaded some stuff up already. What I'll do, I'll play it for you, and you can see how different it sounds to the original loop I played you, and then we'll go in and we'll look at exactly what I did to make it sound like that. Okay, so what I did there, I loaded it up into, or loaded each layer into two individual EXS24 samplers on two different channels in Logic Audio. And all I'm doing there, if we look at the MIDI part, is I'm just re-triggering that bass line. So instead of playing the full loop, I'm just re-triggering it from the beginning to create a different groove and essentially a completely new bass line. So if we play that, you can see how those parts are working. Okay, so obviously it actually sounds different as well. And that's what's important about splitting it up into two parts, because you can leave your bass sub layer flat. You don't want to mess around with that. You want to have that nice and fat how it is. And then on the top layer, I've added quite a few different effects. I've got a bit of distortion going on there, just to kind of bring out the kind of tone of that sound a little bit. I've got a little bit of chorus going on there as well, just to kind of give the sound a little bit of width and a bit more kind of, bit more chunky kind of sound to it. I've also added a Space Designer reverb, which is a reverb that comes with Logic, but any reverb will do, whatever one you use will fine. And also just a bit of compression and limiting. But what I've done that's made it change the sound so much is I've used the filter inside the EXS24. So I've set it to a low pass filter, and I've given it a little bit of movement using an LFO and also an envelope. Now that's completely up to you. Whatever you want to do is completely up to you. To be honest, I just kind of freestyled it, and that's how it's come out sounding. So you can see now you can take my loops that are in the pack, the flat loops, re-trigger them how you want, put extra filters on that top layer, and you'll get that kind of classic Astrophonica bassline sort of sound. And then what we can do, we can play with the LFO on the top one, play with the LFO speed maybe a bit. So it's still the same bass line, but now we're kind of changing it, which is what you guys can do once you get this pack and you've got it at home. You can put it in your sampler and you can completely make it your own bass line. So there we go. That's one way that you can use part of the loops on the DJ Fracture Artist Series pack on Loopmasters. This is DJ Fracture and you're watching LoopTV.